Hello, everyone. Great Monday afternoon, or better yet, great Monday evening. It is Dr. Anissa Short once again with Conversations with Chosen Pen. I am delighted, as always, to have you here with us in this social media platform. And as in previous episodes, I'm going to ask you to do the thing I always ask you to do. I want you to like. I want you to comment, and I definitely want you to share. Our motto this year is we are growing more and more in 2024, and you are a very significant part of that because we rely on you to refer us. We want people to join this community, to be a part of the Chosen Pen family virtually. Remember, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, and every Monday at 6 p.m., we endeavor to bring you exciting, engaging conversation about a plethora of topics. Let's be clear. In this month of June, we are celebrating fathers. It's our salute to fatherhood. You know, we did it for the moms. We're not going to discriminate. We know men are just as important. The fathers are just as important as the moms. And so we don't want anyone to feel slighted. As a matter of fact, on the 29th, let me make sure I'm saying that right. It's the last Saturday of this month. We'll be hosting a virtual experience. The 21st Century Fatherhood Experience will be held virtually. So, as always, connect with Chosen Pen on Facebook, share our community with your friends on Facebook because we want as many people to chime in as possible. We want you to join us live. It will be on Facebook. It would also be on our YouTube page. We have the privilege of partnering with ACERT TV. It will be on demand there. We want to engage in meaningful conversation with men of various ages, various levels of experience about what fatherhood looks like in the 21st century. So be sure to chime in. That's the last Saturday. Follow us on Chosen Pen. You'll see the advertisement as to the time and all of that good stuff. And so there's a lot I could share, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail because it's not about necessarily Chosen Pen as much as it is about our fabulous guests. Today, as with last Monday, we have another gentleman here with us. He is a father. He is an author. If you live in the Fayetteville area, many of you know him. If you're from the Atlanta area, well, listen, he's known from the East Coast to the West Coast. Let's be clear. Dr. Stephon Ferguson is with us today, and I'm honored to have him. We're going to talk a little bit more about not only who he is, but what his perceptions are about fatherhood. And then guess what? He has a book that recently launched, and we are excited and honored to have been a part of that journey as well. Dr. Ferguson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Short. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you for saying yes. I apologize. Dr. Norma is not here. As you know, she serves many hats. And so
Yes.
this week she's entertaining grandchildren and Vacation Bible School. I don't know if that's the correct order, but that's what's going on in her world. So tell the world and those who may not be familiar with who you are, Dr. Ferguson, tell us a little bit about who you are as a person.
Well, I was born in Albany, New York, and moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina with my family. It was 9 of us, well, actually 11 of us with my parents, and we drove 1968 Bel Air station wagon on Thanksgiving Day of 1968. And I've basically been in Fayetteville ever since. But I graduated from 71st High School, and I went into the military. So I served about 7 years in the Army, and then I got out, and I followed my passion for communications and broadcasting. And so I started working at a local radio station, 107.7, which is now a Beasley Broadcasting company. And that was in the mid 90s. And so I continued my work. I moved to Atlanta in 2011. I'm an ordained minister, and I'm associate minister at New Life Bible Church there in Fayetteville. And I was actually ordained by Doctors Norma and Dr. Alan McLaughlin. About me, as far as right now, of course, I'm an author now, but my real work in my ministry is continuing the legacy of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I realized, I would say, well, 20 years ago, in 2001, I believe it was, right at the turn of the century, I began performing as Dr. King. And as I delved deeper into who he was, I realized that it was a calling on my life
Wow.
ministry calling
Wow.
to continue the work of Dr. King. So I've been doing that for the past 20 years. Moved to Atlanta to be closer to his work, um, and completed my doctoral studies there at ITC, at Morehouse School of Religion. And now I'm taking all the time after performing and traveling, and which I still do sometimes, but I'm putting more focus on the educational piece. So now I want to take all of what God has placed inside of me and share it, particularly with our young people, on nonviolence.
I
So
love it.
that's me.
I love it. I love it. The message of Dr. King definitely is one that should not be lost. And I think the younger generation, the generation that's coming up now, even though they teach in quote Black history, they'll talk about Dr. King, but they don't really get into the essence of who he was and the true message of what he shares. So I commend you on that. As a matter of fact, I was aware of who you were before I had the opportunity to meet you in person, because I always knew you were considered the quote end quote the voice of MLK. So, and I knew about
Right.
that. But anyway, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and being connected with you. And as you know, we're talking about 21st century fatherhood. We also
Yes.
want to end this conversation spotlighting your awesome book and going into that. So let's talk about fatherhood just for a
Okay.
moment. I had already given you an idea of what I wanted you to share, because I think it's great that we get perspectives from men. You know, women
Mhm.
oftentimes, and I'm guilty of it sometimes, people, if they're not aware, they'll put words in the mouths of people. I cannot speak to what it's like to be a father, because I'm not a man, so I'll never be a father, right? But I think it's important that we hear this voice or get perspectives from men, and not just, and every man's perspective is going to be different because their dynamic with regard to their fatherhood experience is different. So Dr.
Yes.
Ferguson, if you had to imagine what fatherhood would be like, I mean, before you became a dad and now
Mhm.
afterwards, what is something that you wish you would had known prior to leaping into the responsibility of fatherhood? What is it like?
I would have probably first liked to know that I needed a really, really, really good job, um, to make some really, really good money. I have one daughter, and she's beautiful. And I would say that one of the things that I would be the, I guess, kind of the commitment that it takes, the not being a contributor, but
Yeah,
being a committer.
I got you.
One who, yeah, not just contributes to a lot of. My daughter did not live with me.
Okay.
I co-parented, and she lived in other area, but she would stay with me every summer from age 5. She would stay with me every summer, and she'd stay for 2 3 months, and it was great. But I think I probably would wish I would have known that the responsibility
Yeah.
that comes along with it, and it's not, like you said earlier in the show, it's good to have a perspective when you're going into it. So I didn't really, I just kind of dove into it, but it worked, and maybe that was a positive thing because it charged me to learn and to grow in
Yeah.
fatherhood.
Right. I love the
So
fact that she spent the summers with you. I'm pretty sure that was like her own mini vacation. Because let's be clear,
yes.
I speak from experience when I say this. Daddies have a hard time saying no to their daughters. And so
Mhm.
we tend to get more out of our dads than we do our moms. But was that your reality?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely was. What they call it, a girl dad, a
Daddy's
dad girl,
girl.
daddy's,
Yeah.
yeah, daddy's girl. But there's a something that they say now. But anyway, yes. So that was it's been a great experience. She's 27 now,
Okay.
so she's an adult, and but that journey was very powerful, and those are probably some of the things I wish I
Had
might have
known
known
before. Yeah.
prior to. Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, what the lesson that you wish you had known, because you're sharing that, would be a voice to someone else, another young man that's coming along. I believe that we live our lessons and we learn
Yes.
in the process, but then I'm not willing to share and be authentic and transparent. We provide nuggets for others. Let me ask you this question. I know for a fact that having, of course, my father in my life, very
Hmm.
present in my life, made a significant difference. But even as an adult, Stephon, I'm in my 50s. My dad still asks questions as if, I'm still a child living in his
Right.
household. It's like he said, I am in my 50s and married. Let's maybe qualify that. And I'll go like,
Hmm.
Dad, you do know I'm married, right? Oh, I know. But in his mind, we're still his little girls. Is that your
Right.
perspective as well? Is that how you
That's
see your daughter?
that's absolutely my perspective. My mom had told me one day that regardless of what happens, I'm always be your mama. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of how I feel. It doesn't matter who else is involved. It doesn't matter. I'm dad. I'm always going to be dad, and I'm going to ask those dad questions. It's
Yeah.
just and that's just how it is, and that'll be forever. I mean, she may be 80. If I'm still living and I'm 100 and whatever, I'll be like, baby,
I know. I can believe it. I talked to my dad just today, and he'll go, "How you doing, baby girl?" I'm always baby girl. I'm doing great, daddy. Then he said, "How's your husband?" And I find it. And every so often he'll go, "Is he still treating you good?" I'm like, "Yes, dad. He's like, okay. That's what I wanted to hear." And I'm thinking to myself, what if I said no? What would happen?
Woo! That wouldn't be good. It wouldn't
I
be.
know it wouldn't be. Yeah, I wouldn't be. Fatherhood has evolved. Once
Yes.
upon a time, like I was blessed to have my grandfather in my life, and so
Hmm.
I knew he and my grandmother had their own dynamic in their household on how they raised. And of course, if they both were still living, they'd be in their hundreds. And then, of
Hmm.
course, I was blessed to have both parents in the home growing up. And even to this day, my parents are still married and living together. But the societal norms have
Hmm.
always played a factor in how fathers and mothers function. And then, of course,
Hmm.
now we have a lot of blended families. We have people who might raise their children in different places, like yourself. You shared parental roles, even though you didn't stay in the same household. There have been a
Right.
lot of there's been a lot of evolution with regards to what fatherhood looks like. Now, the underlying platform of a dad being a provider and a protector probably is still the same, right? But some of the
Hmm.
dynamics in how they function as a dad may look different. How do you see fatherhood now compared to maybe fatherhood when you were a child being reared by your parents?
Yeah, it's a significant difference because, and I think a lot of it, well, I know a lot of it has to do with the change in time. I mean, as we grow and technology, I would say first probably the technological and the digital age in which we live now makes a huge difference. So that's one thing that you have to really be cognizant of with your children because there's so much out there,
Right,
and a lot of times they can connect and they're always on their phone. They're always looking. So there has to be barriers or there have to be borders set up, parameters that are set up and guidelines so that they
right.
won't dip into that wrong area. So I think that's one thing that has significantly changed as it relates to parenting. The emotional aspect of it too, because I think now in these days we are more open to talking about um, the emotional part of it, the mental
Mhm.
part of it, and dealing with that. A lot of our young people are dealing with a lot of things that deal with their emotion and mental health. And then it was one of those things where you kind of put to the side or you hid
Right,
or you didn't
right,
want to tell anybody because it
right.
was like my child is crazy or whatever the situation may be. But now more people are more open to it, more
Yes.
um, because they realize that it is prevalent. I mean, it's a lot of our young people going through those things. So the emotional piece from a parental aspect, um, more fathers, I believe, are striving to achieve that quality time with their children so that they
Hmm.
can build that emotional um, expectation
Yeah.
of society.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I could agree with you on that because I never heard my mom say that her dad asked her anything about her, her are you feeling okay mentally, baby?
Mhm. Right,
That
right.
kind of conversation. Then it was like if you was crazy, we just gonna keep that a secret and we don't want anybody outside the house to know.
Exactly.
Or that people say, well, he ain't wrapped too tight, or she has something going on in her head, and people knew it, but you just didn't talk about it. I can say that I like to think, to in some degrees, my father was very traditional with regards to certain dynamics, but at the same time he was a little more progressive too, because one of the conversations he would have with as my sister and I is that he says we are a team as a family, so whatever we do we're
Mm,
doing as a team. So if it was working in the yard, guess what, we did it as a team. When
right.
in some senses, the young girls didn't work in the yard, my dad's like, no, I need y'all to know how to take care of a home, and it involves the outside, and I want you to understand how to check your oil, and I need you to understand the dynamics of changing the tire. And his phrase was this, because you may marry a plug and he don't know what he's doing. So he was
Right,
he was
right.
very progressive in that respect. He says, I would love for you all to get married and have a man that would take care of you and I don't have to worry about this. He says, but my job is to teach you everything I can so that if I'm not here, you still can stand on your own. So, and then when it
Absolutely.
came to the housework, he would be right in. Now, we didn't always want him to help clean up because he would throw away stuff we didn't want him to. But, he was
Right.
just as engaged in household duties
Hmm.
as he was, and some men didn't see it that way. They put everything in a category. So from that perspective, it gave me a shift in my thinking as a woman, as I progressed along the way, that if this is how my father thought, I needed to be connected to someone who paralleled those values. Otherwise, it was going to be issues in the house for real.
Right, right,
So,
right.
if there was any bit of advice you were going to give to a young man who has not embraced the responsibility of fatherhood, other than what you've already shared, what would be that one bit of advice you would extend?
From someone who is expecting to be a
Yes,
father, who get
possibly, if not now, or in the near future.
I would seek advice from other fathers.
Yeah.
I know I did do some seeking because my best friend was a father.
Okay.
He was a parent, and I did ask him, a few questions about, how it is, what are some of the things that I should be looking for. But I would say it's a commitment, and make sure that prepare yourself for
Hmm.
that commitment, whatever that means.
Yeah.
In finding the balance between work and family, and trying to make sure that you don't spend a whole lot of time. If it's a girl, you might have to do a lot of overtime, but not spending a lot of time there, and just balancing your work and balance, and making sure
Yeah.
that you spend quality time
Exactly.
with your child, and being a role model, and serve as a role model, because your children they don't so much um, do what you say,
Yeah.
they kind of do what you do.
That's
they,
exactly what they
they
do.
they kind of follow,
Exactly.
like,
Your
but
pattern.
you ain't
Right.
doing that. How
I know. And then as we get a certain age, we'll tell you in so many words. You ain't do
right?
it. Yeah, I get it.
Now
And
you
I
expect
agree.
me to do that, and you
I know.
don't even do it.
I,
But
I agree.
serving it as that role model, yes, ma'am. And when you're looking at the values and perspectives of life, and how to manage life and deal with life, from work to recreation, to everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would kind of be my advice, to kind of
Yeah.
prepare yourself to talk to those who are, and make sure that you're prepared to spend that time, make that commitment, and in serving as that role model. Because I know, for me, and I think for most fathers, uh, they want to show their children, especially their girls, how they should be treated
Yeah. That's really good.
by. So you set that role model. Look, this is what you need to expect, and if
Right.
it's any less, then
Yeah.
he ain't the one.
He ain't the one, right? My father is and has always been. I think my sister and I, well, I don't think I know, we take after him in the sense that we never met a stranger. We're very
Hmm.
cordial, we're very outgoing, we're social butterflies. And so he's been
Hmm.
always that to us. So in the course of time when young guys want to come by and see us, whatever that
Hmm.
is, My dad would be like, "How you doing, young man?" He'd just be so friendly, and then I guess the guys thought they had it in like Flint. They were
Mhm.
sitting. And then as soon as he leave, my dad would say, he not the one, not my boy. And we would go, "Oh my God, you were so nice to him." He says, "Well, I needed to be nice with him. He doesn't know any better, but not
Mhm.
no." I'm not.
Mhm.
One of his phrases was, I didn't raise toys, and all he is about games. That kind of thing. We was like, oh
Woo.
wow. So, at the time we thought he was just being so strict and that kind of thing, but
Mhm.
I appreciate it later. So
Right.
conversations about setting the standard and being present and showing your daughter how she should be, your children, how should the daughter especially to be treated.
Mhm.
While they may not be as receptive initially, I promise you
Right.
they'll appreciate it because we did. So, so thinking of fatherhood, you're going to be a part of the 21st century fatherhood experience that's going to be
Yes.
held virtually on the 29th. I think we
Mhm.
have you down pegged as a moderator. You definitely have the voice of that, and you could bring a lot to the table. I just wanted to make sure people knew that when they chimed in
Mhm.
and they can watch us live here on Facebook, that you will very much be a part of that. But as important, or even more important, honestly, Dr. Ferguson, you've got a new book out. I want to share this picture with the world. Not that we don't already know, because right here in the city of Fayetteville, it's been all over the place. We have seen it
Yes, ma'am.
from various vantage points. Here it is,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Stephon Ferguson's book, Legacy Reloaded, A Nonviolent Awakening. Give us a snippet of why you believe everyone should get a copy of this book.
I believe that everybody in the world should get a copy of this book. And if you don't speak the language, get an interpreter. We're going to be putting out some in different languages, but for now, I believe they should, because this book is really revisiting the legacy of Dr. King, but not really the legacy of him as a person, but what he stood for, his philosophy of love and peace and nonviolence. Nonviolence is what won many of the struggles, particularly during the civil rights movement. But where it really started from that aspect in with the bus boycott, that was Dr. King's first opportunity to use the nonviolent technique, and it worked. They stayed off the buses for 381 days. That's more than a year. But it was the fact that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. Also, it was Dr. King's leadership and a lot of people who were part of it and involved. But the crux of what made that change was the 50,000 Black men and women of Montgomery, Alabama, who refused absolutely to ride the city buses. And that's what caused the Supreme Court of our nation to render that decision that segregation in public transportation was unconstitutional. And so, what I'm doing in this book, I'm not only talking about some of my experiences along this 20-year journey, but I'm also tying it into today and how we can use this same concept of nonviolence as a method of bringing about peace and justice in America and really throughout the world. So everyone can relate to this book because there's some things in it that they can see that I'm sure they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't. So education is a big piece of it. As I was saying earlier, I'm delving more into the educational piece of it. So I think they should get it because I think it will give them their awareness will be heightened. But not only that, I believe that they will see that how they can be a participant in bringing about this justice. Because, as I said, it was the 50,000 people in Alabama uh, who refused to ride the
Right,
city buses.
right,
So I think they should also get it because it brings to the forefront some of our history that we're not known. I'm going along this journey. I actually marched the 54 miles from Selma to Montgomery with Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network and Reverend Jesse Jackson and many others. There's about 40 of us that did the whole march, but thousands would join us every day as they did in the original march. And to relive those footsteps that they took, they camped out at night. They marched about 10 miles a day. Um, but they were doing it for justice. They were doing it for voting rights
For a
and
cause, right?
for a cause. And that was in March when they marched. But it was only 5 months later that the Voting Rights Act was signed into law.
I got you.
So the nonviolence piece brought about the victory um, in Montgomery, Alabama, with the bus boycott. It brought about in '63, in '64, the Civil Rights Bill was signed into law. In '65, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. And all of these great progressions as it relates to race relations was a result of the nonviolent movement. Now, they could have easily returned violence for violence.
Right.
They could have easily, but that would have given the oppressors something to. They could
Exactly.
have they
Exactly.
could have killed hundreds and hundreds of innocent people and argued that they were inciting a riot. So they
Mhm.
knew how to deal with violence, but they didn't know how to deal with nonviolence.
So, Dr. Ferguson, here's a question that was not a part of your questions, of course, before. But in line or to parallel kind of what we discussed earlier with regards to how fatherhood looks different
Mm-hmm.
now in some respects than it did, in the last century, it would be fair to say that some of the struggles look different now than it did back before all of these laws were passed. So when you
Mm-hmm.
look at your message of a nonviolent awakening, and you want to look at and you're looking to evaluate and to implement or to offer the principle of nonviolence that Dr. King actually emphasized, how do you see it applying to the lives of our youth today who have no point of reference to what it was like back in before these laws were enacted?
You know what we do, as you know, I perform as Dr. King, so I transform into the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so I take that voice and well, I utilize that to kind of pull them in. And then once I pull them in and I have them, then I educate them because, as you said, most of them have no idea.
No idea.
And a lot of them are not even, don't really care to even know, be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
you have to use other methods to get their attention. And once you grab their attention, then you educate them, and they're like, wow, especially our young people. If they see the film, The Young People of the March, I forgot the name of it, but it's The Young People of the March, but it's when it was during Birmingham. And these kids jumped out of the school windows. The teacher turned her back. She turned her back to the blackboard and she knew what they were doing. They're jumping out the windows of school and they're running down to protest. You know, you're aware of when they got sprayed with the water
Yes,
hoses and the
yes,
kids. That's
yes.
what really brought the attention. Do you know they came back in swimsuits and trunks the next day? Because they were so
They
involved
committed.
in it.
They were sold
And
out. Right.
they were
Yes.
sold out and they were committed in making a difference because they could not stand the education was unequal. Everything,
Yes.
the society.
Yes.
So what I try to do is bring them in, educate them, and then do different exercises that kind of bring them to realize their values. And then when they see what has been done before, the struggle and what people have had to go through for them to even be where they are right now,
Exactly.
they begin to kind of realize, man,
Yeah. They have a
this
greater
is serious.
appreciation.
They
A
have a
greater
greater appreciation. But as you said, it's a new day. So you can't use the same exact, the principles are the same,
Yes.
but there's changes in adjustments that you have to make to work in this era.
Yes. So I know that one of the commitments you have right now, Dr. Ferguson, is getting the book out, getting the book out, not so much because you want everybody to have a copy, which we do, but
Yeah.
because of the messaging. So if people wanted to connect with you, I've got your website on here, thedreamlives.com.
Yes.
Tell us who would be the ideal. Where are you willing to go? What are the audience? What does the audience look like that you want to engage with? We know you talked about young people, so to give people an idea of where you're willing to go and who you're open to speaking with, let's talk to that point a little bit.
I'm willing to speak to any group. The focus would probably be more so on our colleges and universities,
Okay.
our schools, of course, and our churches. Nonviolence was birthed in the church.
Exactly.
In many instances, we have moved away from that piece. So, in my dissertation, one of the things I did is I spoke to several pastors of different denominations and asked them about nonviolence and if they had departments within their church that dealt with social issues, and the vast majority of them did not.
They didn't. I got you. That's good. That's good, Dr. Ferguson. So if anyone wants to connect with you, if they want a signed copy of your book, thedreamlives.com is the website to visit. You can book him to speak. He can come as himself. He can come as Dr. King. You don't have to wait till Black History Month or MLK holiday, right? Dr.
Exactly.
Is that safe to say?
Exactly. The
This
need is right now. We're in an election year. I, I'm willing to go wherever I need to go. And
I understand. I commend you on the work that you have done in keeping the message alive, not just because everyone needs to know who Dr. King was, but just as important that his message still lives. And that's what I believe you do in conjunction with his family and all and everyone else who believes in the principle of nonviolence, who believe in the principle. Now, if they want a copy of your book and they don't care whether or not you have your signature in it or anything, they can go to
Amazon.
Amazon. Is that correct? They can go to
Yes, they can go
Amazon.
to Amazon. If they have Prime, they can get it in a few days, 2 or 3 days.
Yes. All right. Any last words or comments as it pertains to your book, fatherhood in general, or just who you are? What would you want to leave to our audience today?
Well, the piece is about love, and it all comes down to the ethic of love. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Chosen Pen Publishing, to thank you and all the great people, staff who was over there where I got my book published at Chosen Pen Publishing for the work that you're doing and continue to do. Um, Thank you so much. We
Well,
appreciate
thank you
it.
for trusting us with this assignment. It was a journey. It's been a journey. I'm not going to even talk
Yes.
about it like it's over because it's not over, but I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you because I got an opportunity to know you. And I mentioned this to you in a conversation we had before. I was like, we just met last year, but I feel like I've known you for years now.
Yes,
I've
I
known
feel the same way. Thank you.
We've
I
gotten some
appreciate it.
feedback. One gentleman chiming in says, this is great advice, the advice you've given for boys and young men. And this has been an interesting and enjoyable discussion. So, with that said, I want to
Great.
say thank you all for watching Conversations with Chosen Pen. We'll be back next Monday with another dynamic guest, another father, another author. We'll be talking more about what it looks like for 21st century fatherhood and what that looks like. Don't forget, if you want to connect with Dr. Ferguson or a copy, if you like a copy or signed copies, IES, of his book,
Yes.
thedreamlives.com. Thank you again, Dr. Ferguson, for being our special guest. Thank you all for chiming in. And don't forget, like, share, and comment. We are looking to grow more and more in 2024. Thanks again for chiming in. Have a great night.